Okay, so I got something interesting to talk about today. Way back when I entered into the field of psychotherapy, there was this one idea that I struggled with. And I've struggled with this idea my whole career until now I'm at a point where I actually want to question this idea. I want to stand up against this idea because I don't think this idea leads to us becoming quality psychotherapists, or at least as quality as we can possibly be. Now, I know this idea is something that's commonly accepted, but please hear me out. Please listen to what I'm trying to say because I think it's important and I think it makes sense. And that one idea is the idea that we should treat our psychotherapy approaches like tools in a toolbox. My first job in the field of psychotherapy, I was working at a community mental health center. And there would be these trainings that would come up, and they would say, all right, we're sending the whole staff to a CBT training. We're sending the whole staff to a mindfulness training. We're sending the whole staff to a trauma-focused CBT training. We're sending the whole staff to a family systems training. And I eventually questioned my boss about this after a couple of years of going through this. And I said, but if I really one of these approaches really makes sense to me, why would I continue to go to other trainings? Why would I continue to go to trainings that are outside of the approach that makes sense to me? And she said, because you want to build your therapeutic toolbox. And I thought, okay, I mean, that makes sense, or it made sense to me. I understood what she was trying to say, but here's what confused me, and here's what I struggled with to this day. If I treat the psychotherapy approaches like they're tools in a toolbox, then inherently I have to master each tool so that I can apply it with each client effectively. And psychotherapy is very, very hard. Another thing is I would have to decipher which tool would be appropriate for which client. And I would also have to be able to decipher if I were using the wrong tool, if it were not working, how would I decipher that it wasn't working? And then how would I make a decision to use another tool? That has always been a complex issue for me. And I also noticed that the masters in the field of psychotherapy, Bill O'Hanlon, John Gottman, Chris Iveson, Jay Haley, Paul Václavic, Milton Erickson, they didn't seem to have a toolbox. They seemed to become masters of their approach. And I got really interested in this, and over the years I have followed researchers, Scott Miller to be one, and Scott Miller and I were talking at a conference recently, and he pointed out that there's never been a single research study that says by matching or attempting to match client problem to therapeutic approach leads to better outcomes. Never been one. And I thought, wow, that's so crazy, because we spend a lot of our time teaching this toolbox approach to match client problems to a therapeutic approach. What leads to better outcomes is something that we refer to hope. There must be hope present in the room. Something called expectancy. The clinician having expectancy that the client will get better. And then something called clinical mastery. So how well does the clinician know their approach? Those three things are the greatest indicators to positive outcomes. So why are we teaching this toolbox approach? And I don't know. I really struggle with that. But what I can say is one of the things that I think is so important. Now, of course, I teach solution-focused brief therapy. This blog is about solution-focused brief therapy. But I mean this in a grander scale. You should learn an approach, master it, so you can use it with almost any client, with almost any problem. Let's take the solution-focused approach, for example. There have been multiple meta-analysis where they compared solution-focused brief therapy to other approaches to see how solution-focused brief therapy measured up to other approaches in different areas. And they've always found that solution-focused brief therapy was at least as effective as treatment as usual, and it always did it in fewer sessions. But as I travel around the world teaching this approach, the questions that people ask me are always, does this approach work with client population, dot, dot, dot? How does this approach work with client population, dot, dot, dot? Is there research to support this approach? Does this approach work with big problems? And the answer is yes. And I want to advocate for learning solution-focused brief therapy differently than this toolbox approach. In fact, I want you to think about it like learning another language. So if I were to teach you a second language, French, for example. I don't speak French. If someone were to teach me French, I don't need to learn how to speak French to a man versus how to speak French to a woman versus how to speak French at breakfast versus how to speak French in the afternoon versus how to speak French at dinner versus how to speak French to a child. I just have to learn how to speak French. And that fluency will cause me to have the flexibility to be able to think it in any environment, in any context. And solution-focused brief therapy works in the same way. If you master the art of asking questions, if you master the art of asking questions that are more likely to lead towards client responses and long-lasting change, then you can bring that language, you can bring that fluency into sessions with couples, into sessions with individuals, into sessions where the problems are grand, like trauma and infidelity and things like that, and bipolar disorder and depression. You can bring that fluency into sessions with children and families, but with this approach, it is really so important to treat it like a language so you can build your fluency and bring it into any clinical setting. And there's research to support that that actually leads to better outcomes, that actually leads to more positive outcomes in the client's life, and it is supported by the fact that every time we've analyzed and compared solution-focused brief therapy with treatment as usual in many different problem settings, it's always performed at least as well as other problem-focused approaches and always in fewer sessions. But it's so critical that you treat learning this approach like a language and not treat it like just another thing you can add to your toolbox. That is a very difficult way to learn solution-focused brief therapy. So I think a lot of people kind of miss this very crucial step. And again, I hope that you would take the time to hear me out. I know that the mastering and building your toolbox is a very common metaphor used in our field, but I want to question it just a bit. I want to push you. I want to point you in a different direction as it relates to solution-focused brief therapy. And that's why, me and my colleagues, we offer so many trainings, because in order to master a language, you have to immerse yourself in that language. That's why attending intensive trainings are so important. That's why surrounding yourselves in a community of other solution-focused talkers is so important. But that's why these things are so important. I've had so many people tell me, I'm not going to attend the solution-focused conference or the solution-focused training, or I'm not going to download the solution-focused resource because I already have it in my toolbox. But that's not the appropriate way to think about solution-focused brief therapy. We have to think about it like a language. So, and think about the way language evolves. If you learned English like 10 years ago and you didn't add any more words to your vocabulary, think of all of the words that have come about in the last 10 years that did not exist at all 10 years ago. Like right now, I can say to you, I just read a tweet that made me LOL. Like, if you didn't add those phrases and add that context to your vocabulary, you wouldn't have any idea what I was saying. Well, in solution-focused brief therapy, because language evolves and because people evolve, the language of solution-focused brief therapy evolves. Not to mention, this approach was founded by people studying the conversation and really identifying what questions were more likely to lead towards client change. Well, 40 years later, we are still analyzing session. We observe each other, and we are still making new discoveries, and the approach is evolving. If you paid attention to my teaching 2 years ago, it looks drastically different than my teaching today. So it's so important to attend trainings, to immerse yourself in solution-focused brief therapy, become a member of the solution-focused community. And I try to make that as easy as possible. I have a Facebook group you can do for free. I do loads of free trainings for free. But I just want to say why that stuff is so important, because I don't want you to think about solution-focused brief therapy as a tool you can add to your toolbox. I want you to think of this as a language that you will pursue fluency in. And the pursuit of fluency never really ends. So again, I know that the toolbox metaphor is commonly accepted. I don't mean to offend anyone. I hope that you'll take the time to listen to what I'm saying and really hear my point in this message, because I think this is a very important thing. Now, me and my colleagues, Chris Iveson, Evan George, Adam Frower, and Johnny Kim, and Jackie Von Siffer-Bergs, and a few others, are writing in a book right now about using solution-focused brief therapy with trauma. And for the first time, we're actually going to publish these ideas, just because we believe so deeply in the importance of it. We think that this is so important. And just because something is commonly accepted does not mean it shouldn't be scrutinized. So I hope that you heard the message that I was trying to convey. I hope you enjoyed this blog, because I think this is one of the most important videos I've ever made, because it's really going to identify where we're going in solution-focused brief therapy these days. So thank you for watching this video. Please help me spread this message. Give me a like. Give me a share. If you're watching this any other place other than my website, shoot over to my website and you can see those free resources I've been talking about. I'll give you access to my solution-focused Facebook group and help you join the community. But, my passion and my mission is to spread solution-focused brief therapy as far as I possibly can and reach as many people as I possibly can. And that mission started because I genuinely was blown away by what was happening in my sessions from the very beginning when I started doing solution-focused brief therapy in the lives of my clients. Like, it still amazes me to this day. But what even further is what it's done to me as a person. Like, it's completely changed my life and impacted the way I look at the world. And I just want every clinician that's interested to have access to the ability to learn this approach. And I think sometimes when we treat it like a tool that we can put in our toolbox and mix with other tools, it gets difficult to learn, master, and implement effectively in your session. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it.